A silent march to church, a 10-year-old boy leading the way. His sign read, "Please don't deport my mommy." His mother is Aura Hernandez.
Aura was supposed to report herself to the immigration authorities on March 1st.
Hernandez survived domestic violence in Guatemala. In New York, she was a single mom of 2. Today, she wiped away tears, starting a new life chapter in sanctuary. One step out of this church, and she could be detained or even deported.
At the end of the day, it really is a golden jail cell.
After the 2016 election, the arrest of non-criminal undocumented immigrants rose sharply. Hernandez says resisting deportation came down to a choice: life or death.
Everybody knows that Guatemala is a dangerous place, but even more than that, for her, it's very dangerous personally.
They have been denied. One or two of her petitions have been denied, but it doesn't mean that she has to give up.
Today, an interfaith service was held in support of Hernandez at the Fourth Universalist Society Church. Their prayer was for protection. Ravi Rakbir was by her side. He's an immigration rights activist fighting his own deportation.
Helping others takes my mind off my own situation.
During this Holy Week for Christians, Hernandez sat on the church's altar. Her feet were washed with water. It's an act of humility. The single mom now leaning on her faith and waiting for a miracle.
Throughout his campaign for office, President Trump made halting illegal immigration and building a wall along the U.S.-Mexico border a central theme. Now, nearly a year since he was inaugurated, Immigration and Customs Enforcement says that arrests are up roughly 40%. But the president's policy has also inspired a renewed resistance. Special correspondent Duarte Geraldina reports from North Carolina on churches offering sanctuary to undocumented immigrants.
The doors of Umstead Park Church of Christ are unlocked, but Eliseo Jimenez is trapped within its walls. The 39-year-old is an undocumented immigrant with a standing deportation order, meaning Immigration and Customs Enforcement want him returned to his native Mexico. But he's not going.
I'm not going to give up on my kids. I'm not going to take them away from their own country, take away their rights to better education, better healthcare, better life.
Instead, he's chosen sanctuary in this church, relying on an ICE policy that says federal immigration agents won't apprehend people in so-called sensitive locations. It's part of a strategy to buy time to reopen his immigration case and to find a legal way to stay.
Umstead Park United Church of Christ is one of a growing number of churches around the country that have publicly declared their opposition to existing U.S. immigration law by offering sanctuary to undocumented people facing deportation.
What I want to voice this morning is...
Reverend Doug Long is the pastor here.
I want to be able to say to my grandchildren one day, maybe I didn't live during the height of slavery, maybe I didn't live through Nazi Germany, but when I had the opportunity, when we had the opportunity to offer refuge to a family in need, to an undocumented immigrant who was
but can't even offer refugees for the homeless in America.
The sanctuary movement has its modern roots in the 1980s, when civil wars in Central America sent hundreds of thousands of political refugees into the U.S. seeking
undocumented migrants.
Church leaders sheltered them and were later prosecuted and convicted, but received no jail time. The movement was revived under President Obama, who critics called the deporter-in-chief for the record-high removals that happened under his watch. And since President Trump took office, the number of churches that have joined this movement, saying they're willing to shelter people who help do so, has grown from 400 to around 1,000.
Start checking them churches out, man.
The Trump effect is in new allies coming in.
The basement of the churches.
These churches stepping up like never before.
Illegal migrants.
That is the Trump effect.
Hiding in basements of
Martinez
churches.
is the founder of Alerta Migratoria, Migration
That's where you
Alert,
probably
a
catch
nonprofit
half these
started during
migrants
2016
in these
when
church
many
basements.
recent arrivals from
You
Central
hear that,
America
Tom
were
Holman?
detained and deported.
You know, at this
Put a
point,
team
it's
together
not
to check
just,
out these churches.
you know, a moral human rights thing. It's also a Christian duty to uphold Christian values and to be there for the people that are most vulnerable.
Umstead Park began hosting Jimenez in October 2017, after
You
first
them raids
undergoing
on them
legal
churches,
training
you
to learn
probably catch
how
a
to
whole
offer sanctuary. Pastor
plane
Long
full of
says both
illegal
he and his
migrants
congregation had
in
many
these
questions.
churches.
Is this legal? And in what ways might it not be legal? How might we get in trouble with
Because you breaking
our
federal laws, you
501c3 status?
harboring
Can we provide enough
fugitives.
volunteers
Hell,
to
you mean how can you
maintain
get in
this
trouble?
kind
That's a
of
crime.
ministry? How much does it cost?
Harboring
After talking to legal
fugitives.
counsel and
Goddamn
other
it.
churches in the area, the congregation voted overwhelmingly to welcome Jimenez, converting a former office into a studio apartment. On weekends, his children, Allison and
Look how
Christopher,
they
stay with
living,
him.
and you got
They sleep in a
homelessness in
tent,
America.
a small touch
And these
meant to make
churches
the
don't even
ordeal
open
feel
their
like an
doors for the
adventure.
homeless Americans.
A church
Fuck outta here,
volunteer
man.
stays on the grounds 24 hours a day, sleeping on a mattress in
See?
the pastor's office, just in case immigration agents show up. Jimenez attends services and helps out around the church to pass the time.
A
While
slave
back
in
at
the
his
church.
old home in Greensboro, about an hour's drive away, his partner,
Hiding.
Gabriela, who's also
So they gonna
undocumented,
use you to clean up
works
and
50
all
hours a
types
week
of
and
shit in the
struggles
church.
to take care of their children.
They don't really understand what's happening, but they get frustrated.
Come over here
They
legally,
cry
you'll
like
be all right,
almost every
Gabrielle.
night and every morning.
Do it
They
the
ask me
legal
why
way,
his father is not at home.
Gabrielle.
What I just told them is like that he's working in the church.
Jimenez says he first came to the U.S. when he was 17. In 2007, he was deported back to Mexico, but re-entered the United States a month later. A federal
Illegal.
felony. He did it, he says, to care for his then young children, who are U.S. citizens.
Give them whatever they need for school, for clothes, for anything they need. That's just like I'm doing right now with my kids.
In 2013, he was arrested for auto theft, but he calls the case a misunderstanding. He borrowed a roommate's car without telling him. Court records show most of the charges were dropped, but he pled guilty to driving with a revoked license and failing to notify the DMV of an address change. He paid a fine. And under the Obama administration, he was not considered a priority for deportation. He obtained a work permit, paid taxes, and was checking in with ICE officials each year. That all changed in 2017, when President Trump signed an executive order broadening ICE criteria to include anyone convicted or charged with any crime, and generally giving ICE agents far more discretion in whom they target for removal.
People are checking in as they had been in previous years, and they're being told, you know, you have to pack up your bags and go.
That rising demand and Trump's election appear to be fueling this growing sanctuary movement, and yet it still represents only a tiny fraction of the broader Christian community.
We are to be people of the law. Romans 13. Be in submission to governing authorities, because we recognize that God has allowed those authorities to be there, and they are for our good.
Russ Reeves is the former pastor at this church in Greensboro.
Biblical justice. Perfect justice.
He says he's worked hard to welcome immigrants into his congregation, but providing sanctuary, he says, is a step too far. A number of years ago, he was asked to do so, but refused.
I would say that a church has every right and should reach out to see, are there felt needs there that we can meet? Is there some way that we can help them gain access to the system that would perhaps make them able to stay?
Everything but actually offering them sanctuary.
Essentially, yes. The most important thing we could do is to share our faith with them and to ground them in their relationship with God, so that worst case scenario, they do get deported. They go back to where they're from with a sense of divine purpose for their life.
With more people like Eliseo facing deportation and the demand for sanctuary growing, more churches will likely wrestle with this debate. Remember Veridiana Martinez? She came to the U.S. when she was 7. She received deferred action for childhood arrivals, or DACA, and unless Congress acts, she too faces possible deportation this year.
What about people like you?
I don't know. That's a good question to ask the American people.
American
If this
people is
administration
homeless
is really, gonna
and starving.
put their foot down and say no, we're gonna round all of you up, then I hope that we can have the support of churches saying, we're gonna open our doors to all of you.
More doors may be opening, but how long Eliseo Jimenez and others are willing to stay to avoid deportation is another matter. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Duarte Geraldino in Raleigh, North